Well, hello. Welcome to my Christmas jumper and the family portrait caricature, because I am home for Christmas. I am back in the States for the next couple of weeks just to be with my family for the holidays and not be working on my degree forever and ever. So one of the things that's weird and interesting about my family at Christmas time is that my family loves Hallmark Christmas movies. I don't know why. Like, my mom is like obsessed with them. Even my dad loves them. They're on in July, like when Hallmark does its Christmas in July thing. Like, they watch them all the time. They start watching them in like mid-November. I've never been into these sorts of kind of cheesy, dumb romance movies. Anybody who knows anything about me could probably tell in about 5 minutes that that's not my thing. But this year, I got really sick a couple weeks ago. There was this really bad cold going around and I was off work for a week. So I started watching stupid Netflix Christmas movies that were basically Hallmark movies, but on Netflix. And then when I came home, I would spend my evenings sitting on the sofa with a cup of tea and my parents watching whatever Hallmark Christmas movies were on that night, sometimes 2 or 3 a night. This is kind of my first year really watching, and so I thought I was going to talk about some of the things that I've weirdly noticed about these movies, because I know Hallmark movies have a reputation for being like silly and weird and cheesy and sappy and terrible. Now, I can confirm that they are all of the above. Sometimes the extent to which certain things like jump out at you in these movies is really fun. So I thought I'd talk about some of the most random things that I've noticed show up in like so many of these movies. It's gonna get a little bit of like analysis-y, a little bit kind of the sort of deep dive sort of ideas that I get into in my other tropey videos. But this is all about first impressions, and it is very likely that I'm missing out a shitload of stuff because I haven't watched every Hallmark movie, but this is the stuff that I've noticed on my first round of my first year of watching bad Christmas movies. Let's start with the little things, and then we'll get to the hashtag deep stuff that might be a little bit of a stretch. It's just things that I've pointed out, but maybe might not be like intended, or people might be like, you're reading too much into this, and I'll be like, I know, but that's just what I do with movies. Everyone knows this about me. We're just going to talk about some bad Christmas movies because you know I love bad movies. I love bad movies. I'm going to start by saying that everyone takes Christmas way too seriously. It'll be like the draw of an entire town. There's almost always some sort of competition surrounding this. It's like the busiest time of the year. People are weirdly obsessed with it. There's some sort of crazy deadline. Someone's job is like weirdly focused around Christmas, and it's the most important thing. Christmas is the most important time of year, so if you mess up this project, you may as well be done in this business. And it's always some sort of business, because of course all of these movies have rom-com jobs. And the ones I watched this year, there have been party planners, there have been heiresses, there have been party planning heiresses, there have been decorators, historians, journalists, photographers, rom-com jobs. Another thing I've noticed is like, I've never seen any of these movies with a male protagonist. And this isn't like a problem because I know that these movies are marketed to women, but I've seen male and female co-protagonists, but never just male protagonists. And I'm just really interested to see what that would look like. Like, if you want to make a very similar kind of marketed to women type of Hallmark movie, what would it look like with a male protagonist? I think that would be a super fun time. I don't know, they might, not that I watch very many of these movies, but. So now I'm going to get to the little thing that bothers me the most about these movies, because it bothers me so much. Like, guys, why will nobody in these movies just admit they like each other? One of the tropes that I've noticed in every single one of these films is the protagonist friends talking about how she and her love interest should totally, are totally love interests, like, and should totally get together, and the other person calling them crazy. It usually plays out like this. So one friend says, so, you and so-and-so, and they go, oh my god, what are you talking about? It's not like that, we're just friends, you're crazy. And they're like, I don't know. And then the protagonist says something like, you're so weird, Jessica. And it's like, no. Because it happens in every single movie. I get that people need to have that like romantic realization because these are romances, and romances have a specific formula that they go with. But I'm reading this book right now, completely unrelated to this Hallmark thing, but I'm reading this book right now where the main character comes out and says to her love interest, hey, I like you. And I was reading it and I was like, wow, that's so refreshing. I get the appeal of a scene like this, but it gets really old really fast. And I've talked about tropes that might have been good at one point or might have been useful at some previous point in the era of our existence, but it's just been done to death. Can we do something else? No? Maybe? Please try. So the next thing I mentioned is just something that just sort of struck me as weird. It's not like a problem necessarily, depending on what kind of person you are, and it's not like a massive overarching thing that you see in every movie. It's just something I noticed and I was like, huh, that's strange. Excluding movies about Santa Claus or the Santa Claus legend because they focus on a different aspect of what Christmas is, there is a distinct lack of Christianity involved in Christmas. And I don't mean that as in like, you're taking Christ out of Christmas. Like, no, that's dumb. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, like, most of the time, like, traditional Christmas carols are avoided to avoid talking about Jesus or something like that. God's never mentioned, Jesus is never mentioned, and those kinds of symbols are replaced with reindeer and snowmen. And I know that, like, the secular holiday of Christmas can be very distinct for a lot of people from the religious holiday of Christmas. It is from my family, but I still, like, we still have, like, if you're listening to Christmas music on the radio, you're still going to hear those traditional Christian Christmas carols, even if you're not a particularly religious person, because that's just the sort of thing that happens at Christmas. And I know non-religious people that have nativity scenes in their houses just because that's what Christmas decorations look like. I don't know, it just seems like there's a specific attempt made to avoid it. And that makes sense if you're trying to market Christmas movies to people who aren't Christian. And it doesn't happen in like commercially released Christmas movies. Think of Love Actually, where even though it's definitely not a religious Christmas movie, there are mentions of nativity plays. And I know that that's the UK and the US doesn't do nativity plays. But even Netflix's movie this year, Let It Snow, which has a higher production value than some of the Netflix Christmas movies that I was watching, has a scene takes place in a church because it's Christmas. And it's like, you don't have to be a religious Christmas movie, but it just seemed a little odd to me. There's a Netflix Christmas movie called The Holiday Calendar, which features an advent calendar that is never mentioned to be an advent calendar. It's just a thing that exists. Like, the movie is even called The Holiday Calendar, not the advent calendar, because it's a specific avoidance of religion. I don't mind that. Like I said, it's not a problem for me. But it did seem a little bit weird. Hallmark doesn't, the company does not shy away from the religious aspect of Christmas. So it just seems a bit odd to me that the movies do. I don't know. So if Christmas isn't about Christianity and all of these movies are talking about what the true meaning of Christmas is, what do these movies think Christmas is really about? They love to talk about the spirit of giving and the spirit of togetherness, but what in these things does that actually mean? Let's start with the spirit of giving. It means money. Now, I know, there are people who will roll their eyes at me. I'm not here to say Hallmark movies are distinctly materialistic, but without a distinctly religious aspect to a supposedly religious holiday, all that's left is the capitalist aspect. And no one, not even the most religious of people, can deny that capitalism has morphed Christmas into what we think of it as today. The present-giving, Santa-loving festival of, not lights, because that's Hanukkah, but you know what I mean. These movies love to make it so that while money isn't a distinct part of the movie or the message of the movie or even a plot of the movie, it's always something that's looming in the background. Unless it's plot relevant, and we'll get to that. Money is never mentioned, and someone, usually one of the main characters, is always exorbitantly rich. There's an obsession with actors, royalty, heiresses, someone with a rich family. It's just, money is something that's always in the background of the stories that Hallmark movies are telling. If the main characters aren't successful, their parents usually are. And if the parents aren't, the love interest will be, so that they can provide the main character with the life of luxury they've always wanted and totally deserve. Only one time have I ever seen a well-off romantic false lead replaced by a love interest that is less well-off, and it was Netflix, not Hallmark, and the main character's parents did have money and offered to help her out constantly throughout the film. Presents and what people are going to give other people for Christmas are always mentioned or talked about. There is always at least one conversation about what someone is going to get someone else for Christmas. Usually it's someone asking, what should I get for so-and-so, or someone going, or people bonding over going Christmas shopping for a family member. And houses are decorated with so much effort that only people with a lot of money could afford to decorate their houses that way. It's a fantasy life that these movies are peddling. It's the glitz and the glamour of Christmas, and that takes money. Christmas is, no matter what people want Christmas to be, it's a capitalist holiday. It might have been a religious holiday at some point, but now people like making money off of Christmas. Christmas is about buying things for other people. People basically spend their entire paychecks because their love around Christmas time is measured in what they get their families or friends in material gifts. No matter how religious you are or how religious you wish Christmas as a holiday was, that's the reality of the Christmas we are living in right now. And it's the reality of the Christmas that Hallmark is peddling. Not on purpose and not with any malicious intent, but Hallmark is peddling a fantasy holiday. And fantasy holidays have the glitz and the glamour and the lovely presents under the tree that a lot of people need money to make a reality. I'm not here to say that Hallmark movies should be more realistic about the financial situations of their characters. It's something that happens across the entertainment industry. People are too rich and often have to explain away how they can have a house so big. But my sister's listening to Frozen 2 in the other room, which is fair. It's a good soundtrack. If these movies are trying to send a message that it's not about the presents and it's about the act of giving and it's about, community togetherness, there's still that idea of running yourself into the ground to give a fantasy to your family, and it's just something to watch out for. Some people like the fantasy, and that's fine, and it's completely valid. It's just the first time I've watched these movies, and that's something that I've noticed and I just wanted to point out. Now let's talk about togetherness, because these movies love to talk about together. There's always people helping their neighbors, families coming together. Characters often have children that their new love interest have to impress, or parents that they have to impress, some other family member that the love interest has to impress.
Ready? This is going to be your clip. Sorry, I'm taking the last Dr. Pepper.
Oh, it's mine.
Just got to the end. Link will be at the top of the description.
Okay.
Leave yours, please.
Okay. It's often that a workaholic person has to learn the true meaning of Christmas as togetherness and family, always family. And it's great. It's often really, really sweet and often the best parts of these movies. But one of the things that I've noticed about these types of togetherness is tragedy of separation that happens at Christmas for no discernible reason. There's someone's partner will break up with them on Christmas, someone will die at Christmas, someone will die who had a strong connection to Christmas, and the protagonist to whom this happened to won't necessarily be a Grinch about Christmas. They'll often still love Christmas, but there will be some sort of sadness that the main character has to replace for them. I'm going to bring up another genre of movies, and I get it, just, hear me out. You know how in, evangelical Christian movies, they always have, the straw man atheist who isn't an atheist because they don't believe in God, but they're always atheists because God did something to wrong them? You see this a lot in movies about Santa Claus, too. They don't stop believing in Santa Claus because they grew out of the idea. They stopped believing in Santa Claus because they didn't get the toys they wanted as a kid. And it's this idea that, people can't have a problem with a holiday just because they do. They have to have a problem with it just because something broke their heart. And their heart needs to be fixed for them to find the true joy of Christmas again. And while that's a really nice message, why? A lot of these people still like Christmas. It's not even that they're straw man atheists about the holiday. They can't truly enjoy it anymore because something sad has happened to them. And a lot of times that's true, but it's not going to be fixed by some new love interest that your kid likes. I just don't understand why this is a trope. It happens all the time. Talk about this idea of togetherness, but people can't truly experience the togetherness of Christmas because they've lost someone around the holiday, and that just will have this shadow looming over them until that person can be replaced. And it's never framed as a replacement. The new love interest isn't replacing the old love interest. They aren't, taking the place of a dead relative or a dead wife or whatever. They're never distinctly replacing them, but that hole is like a hole out of Christmas. It's like when that person left, there is now a gap in the holiday that something has to fill. It usually gives them a character reason not to trust the new love interest. Like, my ex broke up with me on Christmas, why should I have another love interest at Christmas? And that doesn't make any sense. Just a weird trope that shows up in so many of these movies. And I just don't know why it does. I mean, in certain aspects, I understand the appeal. Someone's dead mother really enjoying Christmas is a really sweet reason to really want to make the holidays special. But then that comes back to the money thing. I spend so much money on Christmas because my dead mother loved the holiday and I'm trying to honor her. But that's not really how people end up honoring their real dead relatives at Christmas. I don't know, it's just like a weird trope that I've noticed. It just happens in a lot of movies. And in 1 and 2, it's like, okay, fine, whatever, I don't really care. But it's in almost every single one I've seen, and I just don't know why. I'm part of quite a few writing groups on Facebook, and there are lots of jokes about how there's like a Hallmark movie plot generator, about how they always have the same story beats. And my parents, every single time two characters fight in a movie, they go 20 minutes left, because it's always at the 20 minutes to the end mark that there's this big fight, like almost to the second 20 minutes. It's weird. This just seems like such a weirdly specific trope to show up as often as it does. I don't get it. And finally, I want to talk about the idea of fantasy, because these movies, as I've said a couple of times before, peddle a fantasy of Christmas. And it's often a beautiful small town luxury Christmas, or it's someone coming to the big city and finding the true meaning of Christmas in a very small part of that big city. It's always about a very small corner of the world. Just another weird thing I've noticed. There we go. In this fantasy, nothing is ever bad for any reason unless it is plot relevant. Great, except it peddles itself as a post-everything society, right? Post-feminism, post-racial, just like everything's hunky-dory. Leads are always still white. I have literally seen, again, true, it is a Netflix movie rather than a Hallmark movie, but there is literally a movie about people going to Africa, but the two leads are still white. Yes, there are white people in Africa, but this movie wants you to think that there are only 2 white people in this part of Africa, so I reserve the right to use this as an example here. The idea is, the fantasy exists as long as the 2 leads are white, everybody else can be whatever they want. And I know that sounds super cynical and, oh, why are we talking about this? But everyone can have every opportunity, and that's where it comes in that if it's plot relevant, we'll talk about systematic issues. Everyone is well off enough not to have to worry about money. No one is discriminated against. And ex-spouses are weirdly always amicable. And I just watched a movie last night where an ex-spouse encouraged their best friend to hit on their ex-wife. Okay, I'm glad you're happy, bro, but that was weird. But the fact that they only acknowledge societal issues when it's in the interest of the plot to do so can feel a little bit exploitative for the people whose problems are being showcased in a literal movie of the week format. I love the fact that in this movie's fantasy, there is no racism, there is no sexism, there is no poverty, but they do exist in these movies, just only when it's beneficial for it to do so. Homeless people exist when we need to show that the main character is charitable. Racism exists so we can give the hero white savior moment. In this fantasy world, societal problems exist for our heroes to combat or prove themselves against. If these issues are used for our rich, white, beautiful heroes to prove themselves against, then it feels like we're exploiting these issues for the sake of a fantasy. And that's not great. Does that make sense? I understand the appeal of these movies. They peddle a Christmas fantasy that everyone wants to see. They like the twinkly lights and the small town community and the togetherness in the family, when a lot of people's families might have a bit more of a toxic situation. Seeing a strange attempt to combat the materialism of Christmas and to combat societal issues by just not acknowledging them just makes it seem like Hallmark is trying to market these movies to as many people as possible without putting the effort in to actually appeal to those people. And no, I'm not trying to apply deep philosophical analysis to Hallmark Christmas movies. But I do think that there is a responsibility that you have to actually live up to the messages that you're preaching. Not to talk about how Christmas is about giving and then still show people with a shitload of money being able to give literally everything they have without a problem. And talk about how nothing is bad in this society, but exploit homelessness for their own purposes. I just think that if you are going to create a fantasy society, you have the obligation to practice what you preach. Again, I'm not expecting anything. This is Hallmark. But I was here for my first impressions of these movies, not for a deep dive into the tropes and analyses of the intricacies of Hallmark movies. If you do want to deep dive into the intricacies of a Hallmark movie, I will link down below to the Capitalism of the Christmas Shoes by a YouTuber I've only just discovered who does this with a lot of bad movies, and I love it. I will link that down below. You saw my brother. I will also link his Liam and George channel because he also liked me too. So yeah, enjoy your Christmas movies. Enjoy the fantasy. Just know that these are my first impressions. And I love watching bad movies. And I will continue to watch these bad movies forever. I will put down all the names of the films that I know that I watched this year. I will miss them out. I'll put them in the description so that you know kind of what I'm referencing when I'm talking about certain aspects of things and things that I've noticed. Thank you so much for watching. Social media will be in the description down below. And let me know your favorite Christmas tradition in the comments. I really like hearing from you guys, so thank you so much. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and do all the things that usually happen in the YouTube spiel, and I will see you next time. Bye!